Hi Year 9, Mr. Tapley here for your next lesson of Year 9 Humanities. This lesson I'll be outlining how we are managing remote learning for the next couple of days in Year 9 Humanities, the processes and the resources we'll be using during these remote learning classes. Obviously we've got some experience from last year in doing this, and hopefully it's just for a couple of days, but I wanted to give you guys a rundown on how we're going to navigate each lesson and where you need to go to find all the lesson resources and activities for our classes. So this is our Compass lesson plan. So same as the first couple of weeks of the term, really, I'll be uploading the learning intention, success criteria, the lesson activities, each lesson to our Compass lesson plan. So we've done that before. You should be familiar with that process. In the lesson activities, you can see the class slides that we'll be using, and just a quick rundown on what we're going to be doing each lesson. And you can access those class slides in Compass Resources. If you go to Term 1 History, just click on that link there. Or if you prefer, you can use Google Classroom, which we've also set up in the first couple of weeks of our class. So Industrial Revolution class slides, you just need to click on that, and you just need to scroll to the relevant class slides. So today that's 34 to 38, and we're going to be looking at the impact of the Industrial Revolution. Instead of running, live Zoom classes, I found that wasn't really enjoyable for staff or students during remote learning last year. But I still want to give you guys some advice and some guidance on each lesson. I don't just want to throw the textbook at you and expect you to understand everything you're reading. So what we're going to be doing instead is for each lesson, I'll be preparing a little video, which I'll hopefully keep between 5 to 10 minutes long, so not too long to put you to sleep. Listening to my annoying accent for that long as well is probably a bit of a pain. But I'll just be moving through the class slides, trying to explain the topics that we're looking at, the skills you're going to be needing in these lesson activities, and any questions you might have about our lesson content. This one might be a bit longer because I'm having to explain what we're doing in addition to what we are studying. But in the future, I'll try and keep these videos nice and short. Again, I did that last year, and I think it's a good way of approaching each lesson because you can pause the video, you can rewind the video. If I'm talking too fast, you need to rehear what I'm saying. You could try fast forwarding the video. My voice probably sounds even more ridiculous in ×2 speed, so I wouldn't recommend it. But it's a good resource to have as well for if you miss a lesson or if you need to go back and study a key topic or something like that. So all the videos will be uploaded to Compass. There'll be a little link for you to click on there, and there'll be a library of videos that you can access. All of our Year 9 Humanities videos will be there, so it'll be in one location, so hopefully it'll be helpful for you guys. And if you have questions or concerns, again, just let me know, and if I need to change anything in how we're approaching these lessons, I can. You just need to let me know that there's a problem. So while we're working on these class slides and completing the lesson activities, obviously I can't check your workbook, but when we go back to school on Thursday, I'll be checking your physical notebook that you'll be writing your questions in. For example, chapter 3.6. Or I'm very happy for you guys, as I mentioned at the start of the year, you can also use the digital notebook that we've set up in Google Classroom. So it's just a Google Doc file there that you guys all have access to. You all have your own individual notebook. If you're having trouble using that file, or you've already created a different Microsoft Word or Google Doc file, you can add the file to this assignment so that I can monitor your work throughout the lesson, and I can offer any feedback or advice on how to answer difficult questions, or give you some well-needed praise if you've done the right thing and your question response was perfect. So you just need to type in the lesson topic, the date, and then you can take your little notes in this digital notebook. It means you don't have to send in any pixelated, 2 pixel JPEG photos of your messy handwriting notebook. So you're either taking notes in the digital notebook or the physical notebook, which I will then check on Thursday to see what we have done in these couple of lessons of remote learning, hopefully. So I think I've explained everything that I need to, so I might as well just get straight into the lesson, if I can get the technology to work. This is all a bit new for Mr. Tapley as well. So yes, we're looking at the impact of the Industrial Revolution today. So we're developing understanding of the effects of the Industrial Revolution. Success criteria is to outline the effects of the Industrial Revolution to people, the cities, and our values, so what we think, how we feel, and to identify a key historical skill, which is cause and effect in history. I feel like I should move my face somewhere less annoying. Good enough. So, the developments of the Industrial Revolution influenced changes to education, politics, economics, health, war, science, and employment. Now, that's a long list for a reason. It influenced change in almost every aspect of our life. It's why it was called a revolution, because it was about change. The population dramatically increased as food production improved. Urbanization, which is moving people to urban environments, to the cities, occurred as people moved from the countryside to the cities. So we've got more people, we've got people in different places, so we're moving them around. And unemployment and overcrowding led to disease, pollution, and poverty. So it's not all positive. We had some negative effects of the Industrial Revolution, but very, very massive changes during this time in history that have had impacts on our lives today. Modern society would be very different if not for these changes. The legacy of this era of history isn't just the technological advancements that occurred during the Industrial Revolution. So it's not just all the shiny new toys and inventions that we created. It's how society was improved by overcoming the negative effects of the Industrial Revolution. For example, currently we're struggling with the coronavirus global pandemic. But back in the 17th and 18th century, we had the cholera pandemic. So that was another disease, another global disease that was ravaging cities across the world. And that eventually led to positive changes around public health practices. So in dealing with a negative effect and creating a solution to this problem, we've actually helped us in the future. So some of what we do today in terms of managing this pandemic for COVID-19, we've learned from the lessons of the past. We've learned from history and how we dealt with this during the Industrial Revolution, which segues nicely into this key historical skill of cause and effect. And me not being able to do that. There we go. In the beginning of this unit, we completed a timeline of significant events. It was one of the very first things we did. Here it is on this slide over here. So it's 10 or 9 key events that happened during, before, and after the Industrial Revolution. Just giving you, I guess, an overview of this period in history, all the things that happened. A timeline is important because it can help us understand continuity, so what hasn't changed, what has continued, and identify cause and effect. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to complete all of the slide activities because some of them are social discussion activities. For example, this one, in your table groups, identify a connection between the events in the timeline on the following slide. But what I can do is move through this myself and very briefly explain it. Or I encourage you guys, if you have the time, if you have the technology on Zoom or Discord or whatever you young people use to keep track of things, feel free to go through these slides and complete these activities and these discussion activities with a classmate, with one of your friends. It might make it a bit more engaging, a bit more interesting. If you have questions, they probably have answers, or you might have the same question. So I encourage you to work through this together if you have the time, if you have the resources, because I don't have the technology skills to set that up. So we're not actually going to be completing this class discussion. But all I wanted you to get out of this, if we were in the classroom, was this idea of cause and effect. So I've very deliberately chosen these key events because they're all connected to each other. There's a lot of causes and effects seen throughout this timeline. Some of them connected directly to the event afterwards. Some of them are connected to the Industrial Revolution. And some of them are connected to our next topic, which is World War I. So, for example, Jethro Tull creating the seed drill, that was part of the agricultural revolution that led to the Industrial Revolution. The spinning jenny, invented by James Hargreaves, that was another invention that allowed us to move from household manufacturing to the Industrial Revolution. This one's more connected to our next topic, which is convicts and colonization of Australia. In 1775, Mr. Tapley's old mates, the Americans, had a war, the American Revolution, between America and Britain, which ended convict transportation from Britain to the USA. cause and effect. Since we can't send them to America, we're going to send convicts to Australia. So the reason Australia was colonized was because of this American Revolution. So that's cause and effect again happening. The Luddite Rebellion in 1811 was kind of like a Terminator event where we rose up against the machines. There were a couple of angry workers who were upset that they lost their jobs to machines, to robots, if you will, and they went around smashing factories and smashing machines. 1833, so this is actually connected to, I guess, the child labor stuff that we looked at. So British Parliament, the government, passed a law, the Factory Act, aimed at improving workers' rights and conditions. So that's connected to the Industrial Revolution, obviously, and it connects nicely to, I guess, modern times. Year 10, you guys go out on your work experience program, and you have a lot of paperwork to sign, unfortunately, around OH&S, so occupational, so jobs, health and safety. So you're hopefully not going to be put into any dangerous situations in your job when you go out on work experience. And that's connected to some of the improvements towards workers' rights that we made in the Industrial Revolution. 1854, because of the overcrowding and pollution and disease that we had in the Industrial Revolution, there was a cholera, so a disease epidemic in London, Britain. These two ones at the bottom there. So in 1901, we created the country. We created Australia. So previously, we were just kind of like little different states or colonies that were part of Britain. In 1901, federation meant that all the different states or colonies formed to create the nation of Australia. We are still technically part of the British Empire, the British Commonwealth, which is why we entered the war in World War I. In 1914, Australia enters World War I, which is a very, very significant event, obviously. It was a world war, and it resulted in 213,000 casualties. So those people were injured, they lost their life because of this. So cause and effect, just trying to show you guys how all these different dominoes or steps are connected to each other. Now, what we're going to be doing for most of this lesson today is reading through chapter 3.6, which is only 2 pages, pages 78 to 80. I'll show you what that looks like in your textbook. And again, you can access your textbook. Whoops, my face is hidden, which is probably a good thing, but there it is. You can access your textbook in Compass Resources. There you go. So we want chapter 3. Or again, you guys should know by now that we've also got the resources in Google Classroom. So textbook PDFs. And we're looking for chapter 3, Industrial Revolution Impact. So we're looking for chapter 3.6, and we're completing the following questions in either your physical or digital textbook or notebook, and I'll be checking them throughout the week, or hopefully on Thursday when we go back to school. Where's the actual chapter? Here it is. So chapter 3.6, this looks at, I guess, the impact of the Industrial Revolution to people's health. So we've got stuff on urbanization, we've got some quotes, some primary source entries, we've got a nice little diagram here, a little artist's rendition of the Industrial Revolution, so what it would be like. So you've got some impact there. And the questions I've actually taken from down here, but I put them in the slide so it's nice and easy for you to read. So question 1. Explain what the writer in source 1 meant by, from this filthy sewer, pure gold flows. So I actually introduced that quote to you a bit earlier on in the class slides. So source 1, what you would need to do is go find your chapter, and you can see that some of these pictures and quotes have source numbers next to them. So source 1 is this quote here from Alexis de Tocqueville, who was a Frenchman in Manchester in Britain during the Industrial Revolution. And he has a quote describing what the environment was like living in the Industrial Revolution. And he's saying, from this filthy sewer, pure gold flows. So it wasn't actually, pure gold. You're looking at a metaphor here. So what is he referring to when he's saying that the Industrial Revolution is creating pure gold? So he's talking about the positives and the negatives there. So it's filthy, it's dirty. He's probably talking about the environment, but what does he mean by this pure gold flowing through these cities, through these sewers? Question 2. Identify the 2 main criticisms that Dr. Robertson, source 2, expressed in relation to the planning and layout of Manchester. So again, if we look in our textbook, source 2 is this quote here, and Dr. Robertson has a couple of criticisms on how the city is set up and how the, I guess, buildings and streets and public facilities have been planned out. So what are his 2 major criticisms? Question 3. How might the conditions described in source 3 have contributed to the spread of disease, such as cholera? So again, if we go back to source 3, right there. So it's Dr. William Duncan. So he's a doctor. He's reporting on the disease, this pandemic that's happening, and he's explaining how overpopulation and overcrowding may have contributed to the disease spreading. So think about some of the negative experiences of the Industrial Revolution that we saw in that child labor documentary that we've read about in the slides. So why or how might the conditions have contributed to the spread of disease? So that disease spreading very quickly and very damagingly. Question 6. Why do you think there was so much crime in the Industrial Revolution? So why might crime have flourished given the conditions that prevailed in large cities in the 19th century? So that one's forcing you to think about the people and the environment. So consider the unemployment and the poverty that we had during the Industrial Revolution. What do you think those people are going to do if they can't find jobs? They still need food. They still need to support their family. Is that going to lead to an increase in crime? And how might that connect to our next topic, which is all the convicts being sent off to Australia to form a new country, which then took part in World War I. Final question. What is meant by the term urbanization? Now, don't go straight to the internet. The reason that we're giving you the textbook and these questions from the textbook is often that these words can be defined in the textbook, and it's not like a silly 400-word textbook definition that you'll get off the internet that you don't really understand with fancy scientific language. What is meant by the term urbanization? You can find that by reading through chapter 3.6. And I think I've mentioned it in the slides as well. That's another resource you can use that's hopefully a bit more user-friendly than some of the websites on the internet. So define that word, and why would you expect there to be a strong connection between industrialization, so having more industry, manufacturing, and factories, and urbanization? So that one's asking you to connect those two terms. So why do you think urbanization might happen in the same place, the same location, these massive cities where industrialization is happening? So that's all I've got to say for this lesson, guys. If you have any questions or concerns, please email me. Please let me know. So you've just got the 5 questions there. Again, in the future, I'll be uploading these videos and they'll hopefully be a bit shorter, going through the class slides. And I hope you guys are keeping well during remote learning. Hopefully I get to see you guys on Thursday. And cheers.